We can do it! Stay awake! Move! Jesus Christ!
Today I'm going to show you a crime action from 2018 titled Death Wish. Be ready for spoilers ahead. The movie opens up in the late hours of the night in Chicago. A police car is racing towards the hospital with one of the officers having sustained a gunshot and is in critical condition. The medical staff swiftly transported the injured officer to the surgery and immediately contacted the hospital's finest trauma surgeon, Dr. Paul Kersey, who delegated his current task to another doctor and rushed to treat the wounded officer. Unfortunately, the doctor's efforts yield no fruit because the officer dies shortly after. The following morning, Paul enjoys a peaceful breakfast with his wife Lucy and their daughter, Jordan. As they celebrate Jordan's acceptance to college in New York, they proceed to Jordan's soccer match, where Paul and Lucy shower their daughter with unwavering support. However, the presence of an angry father who won't stop yelling at the kids taints their joy. As an advocate, Dr. Kersey politely requests that he refrain from his outbursts, but the already enraged man responds aggressively and quickly escalates the matter, threatening to turn violent. Lucy intervenes and guides Paul away from the escalating confrontation, while the man continues taunting him, labeling him a coward even after the game. At a pizza place, the family meets Paul's brother Frank, who asks him to lend some money to pay off a debt, to which Paul reluctantly agrees. They are unaware that Miguel, the valet, not only listens in on their conversation but also pictures Paul's address from their car's GPS. On the night of the birthday dinner, the Kerseys gift Paul with a new watch. However, their joy abruptly ends when Paul receives an urgent call from the hospital, informing him that there's a gravely ill patient and must abandon the party. As Paul departs, Lucy and Jordan head to the grocery store, but upon returning home, 3 masked men invade the Kerseys' house while Paul is at work, and after taking the family's valuables from the safe box, the masked thugs shoot both Jordan and Lucy to get rid of any possible witnesses. Dr. Kersey is in the middle of critical surgery at the hospital when he receives an urgent message regarding 2 incoming female patients. He allows his colleague to conclude the surgery and rush to offer his assistance. However, his colleague stops him and informs him that his wife Lucy has died in the shootout, and Jordan's condition remains critical. Police detective Kevin and Jackson are the officers tasked with conducting the investigations. They later approach Dr. Kersey, asking him a series of questions about the incident and documenting the stolen valuables. Frank also arrives at the hospital and confronts the police officers, expressing his frustration over their perceived lack of attention to the recent crimes in the area, but Paul urges Frank to remain calm. As the detectives reassure Paul about their commitment to apprehend the culprits, a nurse interrupts their conversation with the news that Jordan has survived surgery but she's still on life support. Lucy's father, Ben, delivers a eulogy at her funeral, and as they return from service, he abruptly stops the vehicle in the middle of the road after spotting the poachers on his property. Furiously he fires his weapon, but the trespassers manage to escape. Ben voices his lack of faith in law enforcement, believing that sometimes a man must take matters into his own hands as he puts the injured deer out of its misery. Later, Paul receives a call from Detective Kevin, which disheartens him due to the lack of suspects in his wife's murder case. Kersey's frustration is visible on his face as he unleashes his anger on a homeless man trying to clean his car window. Later he visits a therapist to help cope with his overwhelming emotions during his sessions. He expresses his difficulty sleeping in his bed every day. Every suspicious individual he encounters on the streets triggers memories of the men who took his wife's life. The therapist assures Paul that healing is a gradual process, emphasizing the need for time. Days pass, but Paul doesn't receive any case updates, which leads him to personally visit Detective Kevin. He asks the detective about the DNA results from the blood samples he had collected at the scene. The detective just highlights the limited resources available for a thorough investigation by displaying numerous unresolved cases. Later in the evening, as Kersey exits the train station, he witnesses 2 men trying to assault a young woman. He quickly intervenes, shouting at them to stop their actions, but the men turn their anger on him and beat him up as the young woman manages to escape. Upon returning home, Kersey finds solace in watching television, stumbling upon an advertisement for a local firearms retailer, which he visits the following day. The shop assistant displays a variety of firearms at a lower price. Kersey learns that he must complete extensive paperwork and undergo gun safety lessons, leading him to consider the decision further. Later in the hospital, the doctor is attending to another gunshot victim when a gun falls from the patient's pocket. Kersey discreetly kicks it under the operating table and later conceals it on his personal. Once home, Kersey attempts to shoot the gun for the first time, but the bullet ricochets, prompting him to recognize the need for additional training and skills. Over the following days, Kersey dedicates all his free time to watching gun tutorials, learning proper handling techniques until he improves to a satisfactory level. Kersey becomes overwhelmed with rage after realizing that his daughter is handcuffed while the criminals responsible for her suffering run free, so he decides to take matters into his own hands. He retrieves the gun and disguises himself in a hoodie to hide his identity. As he walks through the dangerous streets of Chicago, he spots two men attempting to steal a woman's car. He confronts them. The assailants shoot at him as they attempt to flee in their car. However, Paul quickly manages to shoot the driver, causing the car to crash. The other criminal emerges from the wreckage while firing wildly. Despite this, Kersey uses his weapon to deliver a fatal shot to the thug, unaware that a woman at a nearby window films the entire encounter. Paul disposes of his hoodie in a nearby trash bin and discreetly boards a train. Once home, he employs his medical knowledge to tend to his own wound before finally falling asleep. Detectives Kevin and Jackson arrived at the crime scene to collect statements, while the woman whose car was almost stolen expresses immense gratitude. The witness who recorded the event views Kersey's actions as cold and harsh. Despite Kersey's face staying hidden in the footage, the video quickly becomes viral, prompting the media to debate the moral implications of Kersey's actions as he saves a life and adopts a vigilante role, earning him the nickname the Grim Reaper. Dr. Kersey extends his compassion to a young boy who fell victim to a shooting perpetrated by a notorious dealer known as the Ice Cream Man. He gets the boy's address from the medical chart and, after completing his work again, stealthily acquires a hoodie from the hospital's laundry and ventures into the boy's shady neighborhood, where he spots the dealer known as an Ice Cream Man hanging out on the street. Wasting no time, Kersey swiftly shoots the criminal before making an escape, prompting the locals to seize the opportunity and steal everything from his cart. Shortly thereafter, the detectives arrive at the scene and once again hear accounts of a hooded figure. Detective Kevin observes a group of children reenacting the shooting and notices that the boy is using his left hand. The boy's use of his left hand draws a connection to the viral video, so he concludes that this could very well be the same individual known as the Grim Reaper. The chief is angry with the detectives for allowing a vigilante to roam free and exact justice upon criminals concerned that such actions might incite copycat behavior. The only clue available to the detectives is that the shooter is left-handed and lacks proficiency in handling the gun. Some days later, Kersey finds himself operating on another gunshot victim, only to be shocked when he discovers that it is Miguel and recognizes his own watch on the patient's wrist. Lacking enthusiasm, the doctor's attempts to save Miguel's life prove unsuccessful as he dies on the operating table. Kersey checks the ambulance and steals Miguel's phone. He scrolls through Miguel's phone, uncovering an image of a liquor store that trades in stolen goods. He refuses to inform the detectives and ultimately decides to undertake the investigation himself. As the night wears on, Kersey walks into the liquor store where he fabricates a story about being a friend of Miguel's, but the store owner notices the hospital label on the hoodie, so he sends someone to an accomplice named Fish calling him for assistance. The owner tries to reach for a revolver, but Kersey catches this movement in the mirror and swiftly impales the man's hand with a dart, compelling him to reveal the location of the stolen goods at gunpoint. Kersey finds his own stolen valuables hidden in the boxes. Fish arrives shooting, but Kersey manages to dodge the bullets while firing, thus claiming the store owner's life. He steps on Fish's wound, inflicting excruciating pain and divulging information that Joe is the man who killed Lucy. Kersey kills him immediately after learning it. The detectives unexpectedly visit Kersey at the hospital and present him with Fish's picture and the ring, which Kersey confirms as his own. The detectives believe that Fish was one of the thugs, and informing him of their breakthrough signifies progress in the case. Once the detectives depart, Paul sets out to confront Joe at his shop. Fortunately, he finds him occupied underneath the vehicle, providing an opportunity to subject him to his merciless interrogation to extract the information he wants. After enduring immense suffering, Joe reveals that the individual responsible for Lucy's death goes by the name Knox. Kersey releases Joe, but as he departs, he yanks a chain, causing the car to crash down on Joe, killing him instantly. Realizing that all the individuals targeted by the Grim Reaper have a connection to Lucy's murder, the detectives visit Frank, but he informs them that he doesn't know anything about it. Kersey receives a phone call from Knox demanding to meet him at a club within 30 minutes. Frank heads to Paul's home, where he enters after receiving no response at the door. He walks into the basement and gets surprised when he finds an arsenal of ammunition and other evidence, ultimately realizing that his own brother is the infamous Grim Reaper. Kersey walks through a crowded club while communicating with Knox, informing him to meet in the restroom. He kicks open a stall, but Knox emerges from behind using an innocent civilian as a shield while firing the bullets. Paul sustains injuries but manages to seek refuge in a stall, returning fire and inflicting a gunshot wound upon Knox. Kersey shoots the power box, plunging the club into darkness and capitalizing on public panic to escape. The detectives receive a distress call regarding the club's shooting, prompting them to rush to the hospital, where one of the victims, who turns out to be Knox, provides intricate details, leading the detectives to suspect Dr. Kersey's involvement. However, upon arriving at his office, they find it empty. Kersey is hiding within another hospital room, tending to his latest wound. Returning home, Kersey discovers Frank waiting for him, prepared to question him about his deviation into insanity. Kersey justifies his actions by asserting that he had no choice but to take matters into his own hands when nobody else would. Their conversation abruptly halts when the detectives ring the doorbell, prompting Frank to answer and deceiving them that Kersey is not home. The detectives are unable to proceed without a warrant, so they reluctantly depart. Dr. Kersey receives a call from the hospital informing him that Jordan has awakened from her coma. Rushing to the hospital, he reunites with his daughter, only to deliver the devastating news of her mother's death, pushing Jordan into a state of emotional breakdown. As Jordan's condition improves, Kersey promises Frank that he will stop his vigilante activities, and after a week, they finally grant Jordan permission to return home. The detectives arrive to question her about the night of the attack, but Jordan informs them that she doesn't remember anything. As Jordan and her father enter the elevator, Knox joins them. However, Kersey deliberately ignores his presence for the sake of his daughter's safety. When he engages in small talk with Jordan Knox, he bids them farewell to her, leaving Kersey to interpret it as a veiled threat. This prompts him to revisit the gun store to legally procure a selection of weapons. Jordan is getting ready for bed later in the evening following dinner. However, Kersey detects an intruder outside and quickly instructs her to seek shelter under the compartment while dialing 911. The intruder enters through the back door towards Kersey's room and fires rapidly on the bed, only to realize it is merely a set of pillows. With a precise shot to the head, Kersey eliminates him. Finally, the police arrive at the scene and Kersey truthfully informs the detectives that he sustained all his injuries that night, procured his weapons legally subsequent to Jordan's recovery, and intended to use them to safeguard her from further harm. Despite their initial skepticism, the detectives find satisfaction in his statement and choose to put the issue to rest. Sometime later, Dr. Kersey accompanies Jordan to her college in New York City, where her friends eagerly await her arrival. As he leaves to head back to his car, he notices a man stealing a bag from a bellhop's cart, and he can't help but call him out, gesturing with his finger. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more of my videos like this.